They live-stream their attempt to explore one of the most haunted places on Earth. But what begins as a thrilling investigation quickly turns into a nightmare when they start disappearing one by one. Everything begins with a video that goes viral. Two high school students broadcast themselves on YouTube as they attempt to open room 402 inside Gonjiam Psychiatric Hospital. The stream cuts off abruptly after the sound of a ping-pong ball echoes somewhere deep inside the building. The teenagers are later reported missing. When viewers go back and watch the footage more carefully, they notice a shadowy figure watching the students through a small gap in the door. The story then moves to Ha-joon, who runs a horror video channel called Horror Times. He watches the footage and becomes completely convinced that what happened to those two students was entirely real, not staged in any way. He decides that Gonjiam Psychiatric Hospital will become the third location featured on his channel. The place has a significant reputation. It is widely regarded as the most haunted location in Korea and was listed by a major international news outlet as one of the 7 most unsettling places in the world. According to local history, Gonjiam was once considered one of the finest psychiatric hospitals in the country. It opened in 1961, but closed permanently in 1979, following a disturbing incident in which a large number of patients died by suicide with no clear explanation. In the decades since, the abandoned building has collected a growing number of dark stories. Some accounts blame the hospital director, Park Yong-gae, claiming he was secretly responsible for the deaths. Others suggest the hospital was never a genuine medical facility at all, but rather a place of torture dressed up to look like one. There are even stories involving soldiers massacred on the grounds, but the most feared legend of all centers on room 402. It is the only room that remains sealed to this day. According to local belief, anyone who succeeds in opening that door will die, and the next group willing to try is about to arrive. Ha-joon schedules the visit for the 26th of October, which happens to be the exact anniversary of the hospital's closure. He also invites several viewers to participate in the investigation. His regular crew members Wook and Sung-hoon will join him, along with a new addition to the team named Ji-hyun. 3 viewers are selected to come along as well. Their names are Ji-hyun, Ah-yeon, and Charlotte. During the journey, the group gets to know each other. Charlotte mentions she has already visited 3 of the locations on the haunted places list, making her the most experienced paranormal explorer among them. The conversation naturally turns toward Gonjiam's legends. One of the most commonly repeated stories is that people hear the sound of a ping-pong ball right before encountering something supernatural. The group also talks about the hospital director who reportedly disappeared without trace. Some believe he ended his own life inside one of the building's bathrooms. There is also a financial motivation behind the live stream. Ha-joon recently watched a racing channel poll in over 200,000 live viewers from a single broadcast and earned enormous amounts from the stream. He is hoping Horror Times can reach 1 million viewers this time and bring in a substantial sum. As the group travels toward Gonjiam the following day, the discussions continue. Notably, no one has ever reported seeing the director's ghost. Most reported sightings are of former patients or a high school-aged girl, which lines up with the 2 students who disappeared in the original video. The group also brings up another incident from years earlier, in which 3 teenage girls entered the hospital on a dare and tried to open room 402. All 3 were found unconscious and taken to hospital. 2 of them eventually lost their sanity and died. The 3rd remains in a coma. Ha-joon then announces that the main event of the stream will be opening room 402. To decide who takes on the task, they draw lots. The unlucky person turns out to be Jung, who is by far the most easily frightened member of the group. Before entering the hospital, the group relaxes by a nearby lake to settle their nerves. When the time comes, they make their way to Gonjiam. The main entrance is fenced off and monitored by police, so they take a longer route through the surrounding forest, avoiding cameras, and set up camp close to the building. That night, Wook and Sung-hoon enter first to install motion, tracking cameras throughout the corridors. Nothing unusual happens during the setup, and they complete it without incident. After dinner, the team gets ready for the investigation. Ha-joon stays at the camp to operate the stream and watch the feeds remotely. Each participant is given a camera and an electromagnetic field detector. When everyone is equipped, the 6 explorers head inside. On the way to the entrance, Jones spots what appears to be a piece of white fabric hanging from a branch. It turns out to be a pair of women's underwear. Since they need something to mark their path for the return, he leaves it on the tree. As they approach the building, police sirens ring out somewhere in the distance. The group shuts off their lights and waits in silence until the sound fades. Then they enter. The building has 4 levels with a basement below. Ha-joon starts the live stream the moment they step inside. Strange technical interference begins almost immediately. Cameras cut in and out with no explanation, adding to the tension. The group moves down a second-floor corridor lined with rooms on both sides and debris scattered across the floor. Charlotte pours out a small amount of holy water she brought from a cathedral, hoping that any nearby spirits might react to it. Ji-hyun begins explaining the evening's plan to the audience, but before he can finish, the door to the hospital director's office slams shut on its own. They go in to investigate. The room contains multiple photographs of the former director. Some show him accepting awards with patients. Others show him playing ping pong. There is also a notice board listing government officials from the year the hospital was shut down. Then they notice something hanging from the ceiling above them. It appears to be a long strand of hair. Trying to stay rational, the group agrees it is most likely just an old broom stuck up there. The group divides into 3 pairs. Wook and Sung-hoon stay on the second floor to set up a ritual space. Ji-hyun and Charlotte take the first floor, while Jung and Ah-yeon go up to the third. On the first floor, Charlotte marks the wall with her name, noting this as the 4th location from the haunted places list she has visited. Beneath her name, someone else has written the words, "Let's live." The two continue into what appears to have been a laboratory. The room is full of standing water, scattered instruments, and walls blackened by fire damage. Inside a cabinet sits a small doll. On the 3rd floor, Jung and Ah-yeon find that the temperature feels noticeably colder, despite the thermometer reading the same as below. They come across a broken pong table and a dead bird lying nearby. They enter the building's infamous bathroom, one of the most feared areas in the entire hospital. On the wall inside is a dark stain shaped like a human silhouette. Local stories say this serves as an entry point for spirits. Despite his fear, Jung steps into a large bathing area that resembles an indoor pool. He looks around, notices something in the middle of the room, and whatever he sees shakes them both to their core. On the 4th floor, Ji-hyun and Charlotte are positioned directly beside room 402. Charlotte explains how the infrared motion sensors work. Ji-hyun provides the history of the room. It was used as an intensive care ward when the hospital was operating. But since the closure, no one has managed to open the door. Everyone who has tried has suffered some terrible outcome. Suicide, coma, unexplained accidents. It became known as the curse of room 402. Wook had already attempted to force the door open using multiple methods before the rest of the group arrived. None of them worked. Tonight's plan is to try again. The group then gathers in the director's office for a spirit summoning ritual. Strings with bells attached have been set up around the room and are meant to ring if something approaches. Candles and ceremonial papers are arranged throughout the space. Ah-yeon begins the ceremony by lighting incense and burning the summoning papers. Immediately, every object in the room begins moving. Sung-hoon points out that the room is completely sealed. Nothing could be causing this. Even the cameras they installed themselves are shifting position. The group continues anyway. Ha-joon informs them that the live stream has already passed 100,000 viewers. Back at camp, the stove ignites on its own, and the lights go out for no apparent reason. The team inspects the rooms again after the ritual. They find something they cannot explain. The doll that was sitting inside the cabinet is now resting on top of a shelf. Charlotte and Ji-hyun are certain they saw it inside the cabinet earlier. Watching the feed, Ha-joon realizes the doll matches one being held by a patient in one of the old photographs. Wook then makes a decision that horrifies Charlotte. He picks up the doll to get a better shot for the camera. Charlotte, who has visited multiple haunted locations before, knows that disturbing objects in places like this is never a good idea. She walks out of the room. The tension between her and Wook is significant. He apologizes and promises not to remove anything else from the building. Charlotte eventually calms down and the stream continues. Ah-yeon heads to the 4th floor to install additional infrared lights, while the others explore the clinic area. Inside, they find small wooden boxes that resemble coffins, each with a hole in the center. Wook reaches his hand into one to feel around. Something grabs it and pulls violently. Ji-hyun assumes he is performing for the camera and decides to try herself. The moment her hand goes in, she feels the same thing. When she pulls her hand back out, claw marks are visible on her skin. Things become more frightening when they look at the wall where Charlotte wrote her name. The message beneath it has changed. It no longer reads, "Let's live." It now reads, "Let's die." Ji-hyun decides she and Charlotte need to leave immediately. Ha-joon, who has been quiet because he was reviewing the wall footage, has already confirmed the writing changed, but the live stream is approaching 300,000 viewers. The money is becoming very real. Rather than being honest, he tells Wook and Sunday-hun that the writing never changed and pushes the team to keep going, despite Ji-hyun's injury and everything else that has happened. Wook begins to consider whether they should stop. Then Ha-joon reviews earlier footage and finds something that genuinely unsettles him. While Wook was filming Sunday-hun, a second camera appears to be capturing all 6 of them from a completely different angle. No one on the team is operating that camera. Shortly after, the camp loses power again. Sunday-hun convinces Wook to continue on the condition that everyone gets a pay increase for the additional risk. When the viewer count passes 700,000, Ha-joon agrees immediately and sends the team to the 3rd floor. Back in the bathing area, the group hears a loud metallic banging echoing from somewhere nearby. Everyone freezes. Ha-joon orders them to find the source. It leads them to the equipment room. The moment they enter, a wheelchair begins moving by itself. The banging returns. Then objects begin attaching to the ceiling and flying through the air. The team members themselves are lifted and thrown around by something invisible. Outside, Ji-hyun and Charlotte are making their way back to camp. But something is wrong. They keep passing the same pair of underwear hanging from the tree, circling back to the same point again and again. They begin finding strange objects and dead birds in the area. Then Ji-hyun goes silent. She stops responding. Her behavior changes completely. Something has taken hold of her. Charlotte manages to break away and reaches the camp. But when she steps inside, it is completely dark. She finds herself suddenly inside an enormous room without understanding how she got there. She sees the doll. She sees Ji-hyun. She sees a figure standing with its back to her. Then the figure attacks. Wook regains consciousness back inside the hospital and rushes to find Ji-hyun and Ah-yeon, who are on the 4th floor, attempting to open room 402. Sunday-hun urges everyone to leave immediately. Then, Wook makes a confession. He tells them that he, Sunday-hun, and Ha-joon secretly staged several of the earlier incidents. The moving objects during the ritual were done deliberately. They relocated the doll themselves. All of it was designed to frighten the viewers and attract a larger audience. But now nothing is staged anymore. Everything happening around them is real, and they need to leave before someone dies. The confession plays out in full view of nearly 1 million live viewers. At the camp, Ha-joon realizes he can no longer rely on the team. He enters the hospital himself and continues filming. A ping-pong ball rolls toward the 3 remaining survivors inside. Somewhere beyond room 402, they hear what sounds like Charlotte calling for help. The lights flicker. The door to room 402 opens slowly on its own. Ah-yeon, Wook, and Ji-hyun step inside. The room is nothing like they expected. It is dark and hollow and filled with water. Pools of water hang from the ceiling above them. There is no visible exit in any direction. It becomes clear that they are no longer in an ordinary room. They appear to have crossed into somewhere else entirely. Disturbing shapes and figures begin appearing through the cameras. One after another, they emerge from the dark. Ha-joon sends a drone up to inspect the building from outside and spots a terrifying woman standing motionless at one of the upper windows. Even that is not enough to stop him. He enters the building and eventually reaches room 402. The room appears empty. He looks out through the window and sees something that should be impossible. He sees himself standing far below. Suddenly, he senses someone standing behind him and freezes in fear. He slowly reaches for the camera and turns it on, only to see a terrifying woman standing behind him. Before he can react, she grabs him and strangles him to death. Wook regains consciousness one more time. He is in a corridor, strapped to a wheelchair. Before he can move, the wheelchair begins traveling on its own, carrying him down the hall toward a sealed room ahead. The ending carries a dark irony. Despite everything that has happened, the live stream audience refuses to believe any of it is real. Most viewers assume the entire night has been an elaborate performance. One by one, they leave the stream. By the time the nightmare reaches its worst, only 500 people remain watching. The lesson appears to be straightforward. If an abandoned hospital has a cursed room, decades of ghost stories, self-moving furniture, and a door that no one has ever been able to open, turning the whole thing into a monetized live stream is probably not the wisest decision.